This video is sponsored by Squarespace. I'm actually using their awesome service to make my own website, so stick around until the end to hear more. One of the things that I get asked a lot when editing for clients is, how do I get people interested in my writing? Now, I know that might seem like a simple question that is best answered by be interesting, but I always look at it from a more technical perspective. In my mind, what a client is really asking is, what writing techniques do I need to employ to get my readers interested right off the bat? And my universal answer to that question is, you need a hook. So, what is a hook? Well, a hook is any early circumstance or event that inspires a reader to become curious about the story's implications or conclusions. Basically, in more simple terms, a hook makes a reader go, I want to learn more about this, or I want to see how this ends. Hooks are incredibly important in written work because reading an entire book is a huge time commitment, so proving to your reader early and quickly that there is interesting content in store for them is crucial. Agents and publishing houses love hooks and virtually demand them from anyone who wants to work with them professionally. Even outside of books, hooks are used in movies, television shows, poems, etc. Hooks on a fundamental level are built around words like but, except, and however. Some examples are, a surfer is on a small island just yards away from shore, but a bloodthirsty shark is swimming in the water around her. A billionaire builds a zoo on an island, except the animals are all dinosaurs that eventually break free. An ambitious young musician gains interest to a prestigious conservatory. However, his instructor is an abusive sociopath. That last one, as you probably noticed, comes from Whiplash, a piece of fiction with a phenomenal hook. I want to use the rest of this video to give my view as a professional editor on what Whiplash does so right with its hook. Of course, you do not need to be a professional editor to appreciate or enjoy Whiplash because it's just a great all-around film. But my hope is that I could point out some of the finer, more technical writing details that might go missed to help learning writers out. The scene we will be looking at is Andrew Neiman's first rehearsal for Fletcher, famously known as the Not My Tempo scene. For those of you who haven't seen my previous dialogue dives, the game plan will be to watch the scene together, and as I notice aspects of the writing, I will pause the scene and break them down. If you would like to watch the scene in full without my commentary, I will include a link for that in the description below. I wish I could just show you guys the full scene in this video, but because of certain YouTube policies, that sadly is not possible. However, that doesn't mean we won't have a good time. So without further waiting, let's get into Whiplash.
All right, gang, Whiplash. Little under tempo, okay? Neiman, just do your best. There we go. 5, 6, and... Let's hear some fills. Got Buddy Rich here.
So there are two things that I want to point out. First, like many great scenes, this scene is written in a 3-act structure. We have an introduction, which we just started, and an inciting incident that will come later, a midsection with rising action, and then a climax with a resolution. This is important because it creates the sense of the scene being its own complete narrative. The audience is simultaneously watching a piece of a story and a whole story at once. The movement from low conflict to high conflict keeps the audience engaged and interested with the scene. The second thing I want to talk about deals specifically with the hook. Now, there are many different ways of delivering a hook. Whiplash's hook is delivered via a narrative twist, meaning the hook is not only supposed to grip you, it's supposed to surprise you. A pretty common sense thing to keep in mind about narrative twists is that they can only have impact equivalent to how much the audience doesn't expect them. Put simply, the more your audience is led to believe Y, the more surprising X will be. For maximum effect, X should be the inverse of Y. If you want a twist that a certain character is dead, make the audience believe they are alive. If you want a twist that a certain character is good, make the audience believe they are evil. How does this all relate back to Whiplash? Well, the dialogue so far would paint Fletcher as a kind-hearted, caring teacher.
Little under tempo, okay? Neiman, just do your best. Got Buddy Rich here.
The initial part of the scene, the introduction, is all about setting up Fletcher as a kind instructor in order to capitalize on the twist that delivers the hook. Pay attention to it as we continue on.
Little trouble there. Let's pick it up at 17. Ready? 5, 6, and... Not quite my tempo.
Here we get the first glimpse of Fletcher reacting to a mistake. This provides a demonstration to the audience to show them what to expect from Fletcher when a mistake occurs again in the future. But as I said earlier, the functional purpose of this is to make the audience believe Y so they do not expect X. Another cool thing that this dialogue does is establish Fletcher as an expert on his craft. The scene uses a common writing technique to accomplish this. It has Fletcher, the mentor, comment and react to a mistake that neither Neiman, the student, or the audience, the onlooker, noticed. It builds up the mentor character as precise, watchful, and knowledgeable, cognizant of details that less experienced people aren't even aware exist. Star Wars The Clone Wars does this exact same thing when Count Dooku is training General Grievous.
Master, destroy my focus. You're holding the saber too tightly. Now, too lightly.
This scene in Whiplash does a fantastic job of not only delivering a great hook, but of establishing the character details of Fletcher. He doesn't wait until the song is done or whisper to Neiman that the tempo is off. He stops the entire song cold off a single mistake. This speaks to the Fletcher that we see later and gives a basis to his more wild behavior.
Here we go. 5, 6, and... Downbeat on 18.
So here is another example of the patient understanding anti-Fletcher being impressed upon the audience. The scene makes sure to show it again.
Here we go. 5, 6, and... Bar 17, the and of 4.
And again.
Got it? 5, 6, 7. Not quite my tempo. It's all good. No worries.
This right here is actually one of the most important lines in my opinion. Fletcher tells Neiman that it's all good, no worries. This is the audience's chance to see Fletcher demonstrate restraint after mistakes. This again pulls the audience in the direction opposite of the hook, so that when the hook is delivered, it could stand out even more. Throughout the next moments of the scene, there will be multiple demonstrations of this, all coming together to set the table for the climax.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
The tempo?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
Okay, so here we have the establishment of the inciting incident. For those of you who may not be familiar, the inciting incident is the event in a narrative which establishes the conflict and spurs the character into action. Also, because the inciting incident has been established, we now have finished the introduction and have entered into the midsection. This is where the rising action of the narrative takes place, and as you will see, the conflict between the characters becomes increasingly intense as the scene continues, hence rising action. Now, let's rewatch that last bit one more time, because this is where the hook is introduced.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
The tempo?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
So, this dialogue delivers the twist, and due to the construction of the scene, the hook as well. Contrary to the traits and temperament that we had seen prior from Fletcher, now Fletcher has hurled a chair at his student's head and shows no remorse for it. And thanks to the dialogue, we as the audience know exactly why he did it.
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
Fletcher is fixated on Neiman's mistake, and instead of the patient, composed Fletcher of the introduction, this Fletcher in the midsection acts inversely, becoming angry and violent. Remember, twists only have impact equivalent to how much the audience doesn't expect them, so all that buildup we get in the introduction is paying off now. A first-time viewing audience would be caught totally off guard by this, putting them in the same position as Neiman. And that right there is the beauty of the scene. In a movie called Whiplash, while the main character is playing a song called Whiplash, the audience has just experienced an extreme change of pace and direction. The twist and hook come so quickly that they jerk both Neiman and the audience into a direction that they weren't ready for. I consider it a wonderful artistic choice. And speaking from a functional outlook, the hook works because it has instantly created multiple questions that the audience will want answers to. Why is Fletcher reacting so strongly? Why is no one else reacting to his reaction? Does this happen all the time? Was Neiman rushing, or was he dragging? The only thing that really matters about a hook is that it inspires the audience to seek answers to the questions of the narrative. And by basing the hook on the question of rushing or dragging, the scene itself becomes about the hook. The hook is based around being interested in the conflict Fletcher provides to Neiman. The more antagonistic Fletcher is, the more intense and alluring the hook will be. Keep that in mind while we watch, as the rest of the scene is built around showcasing every aspect of Fletcher's hostility.
Start counting.
5, 6, 7.
In 4, damn it! Look at me!
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Now, was I rushing or was I dragging?
This is a great example of dialogue that really creates rising tension. Fletcher has graduated from verbal abuse to physical abuse, yet all of his dialogue still points towards his fixation on Neiman's single musical mistake. It not only creates further questions for what this event means for Neiman, Fletcher, and Schaefer as an institution, it gives important character building details about Fletcher, since this scene also functions as his character introduction.
Count again.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference! If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will fuck you like a pig.
Here we have the most important line of dialogue given in the scene. Fletcher says,
If you deliberately sabotage my band.
I think this was an absolutely fantastic choice of dialogue from an editing perspective. It really entertains two options, both of them providing information on Fletcher. Option 1 is that Fletcher is so neurotic and anal about his music that he genuinely believes that Neiman's intent was to purposefully degrade the quality of the band. Or option 2, which is honestly better in my opinion, is that Fletcher understands Neiman is making honest mistakes, but perceives incompetence as being equivalent to sabotage. Option 2 would mean that Fletcher literally believes that Neiman isn't smart enough to realize his mediocrity is an affliction that should be punished. Interestingly, we actually get to see Fletcher say this exact thing when a trombone player is out of tune.
Now, either you are deliberately playing out of tune and sabotaging my band, or you don't know you're out of tune, which I'm afraid is even worse.
But the beauty of the situation is that it doesn't really matter whether it's option 1 or option 2. All that matters is that one simple line of dialogue revolving around the word sabotage has informed the audience of Fletcher's outlook and why he is having this outburst. Oh, and very quickly, if this is going to be a video about dialogue, I cannot skip over,
I will fuck you like a pig.
This dialogue was actually a misspoken line by J.K. Simmons, but the director thought it was so unique that he kept it in the final cut of the movie. This actually pairs well with my outlook that all great dialogue is unique. The best writers find ways to make even mundane lines sound interesting. Half the battle of dialogue is to make it memorable, and this pig line does that excellently.
Now, are you a rusher, or are you a dragger, or are you gonna be on my fucking time?
I'm gonna be on your time.
What does that say?
Quarter note equals 215.
Count me at 215.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Jesus
1, 2,
fucking Christ! I didn't know they allowed retards into Schaefer.
Here we have another step in the dialogue that supports the hook. Fletcher now has moved into personal insults. On top of that though, the scene is kept focused by all of Fletcher's rage being funneled into dialogue relating to Neiman's musical talent. The core of Fletcher's antagonism is his relation to Neiman as his instructor, which is also the hook.
Am I to understand that you cannot read tempo? Can you even fucking read music? What is that?
8th note.
Yes, what is that?
Dotted 16th note.
Here we have Fletcher questioning Neiman's ability to even understand music on a fundamental level. We are at an inverse of where we were in the introduction, where Fletcher praised him as a Buddy Rich. Here he demeans and interrogates him.
Sight read measure 101. What are you, in a fucking a cappella group? Play the goddamn kit! Stop! Oh my dear God. Are you one of those single tier people? Do I look like a double fucking rainbow to you?
Okay, this dialogue is cool because it comes just this close to breaking the fourth wall. Fletcher remarks on the cliche of single tears, a common trope in fiction to show a person in quiet, restrained pain. When a character in fiction points out a cliché of fiction, it can be used in two ways. The way most commonly used is for comedic effect, like what we see in Deadpool.
You gotta do a superhero landing. Wait for it! Woo! Superhero landing! Yeah, that's really hard on your knees.
However, another is for dramatic effect. A fictional character pointing out fictional clichés can create an air of seriousness, intelligence, and superiority, as if they are above the medium they are in. Take this example from Elastigirl in The Incredibles.
Remember the bad guys on those shows you used to watch on Saturday mornings? Well, these guys are not like those guys. They won't exercise restraint because you're children. They will kill you if they get the chance. Do not give them that chance.
As the scene in Whiplash is basically founded upon Fletcher being in a position of dominance over Neiman, dialogue that creates this effect really works.
You must be upset. Are you upset?
No.
No, so you just don't give a shit about any of this?
I do give a shit about this.
Are you upset? Yes or fucking no? Yes, you are upset.
Yeah.
So, the dialogue here creates some nice detail. Notice how quietly Fletcher is talking. Compare that to just a few moments ago. Now, instead of insulting Neiman, he is inquiring about his feelings. Both Fletcher's dialogue and tone are very unpredictable, almost erratic. Again, this works to keep the audience uncertain and interested. Mystery is the fuel of interest. Keeping Fletcher as fluid within his own character locks in more of that audience attention.
Say it.
I'm upset.
Say it so the whole band can hear you.
I'm upset.
Louder!
I'm upset.
Louder!
I'm upset!
So, this signals the end of the midsection because the next few lines of dialogue are where all of the conflict comes to a head, also known as the climax. Before we move on to that though, notice how Fletcher's antagonism toward Neiman has changed yet again. Now, he is purposefully publicly humiliating Neiman, drawing in the other students into the abuse. Again, the more multifaceted and varied the conflict that Fletcher presents, the more gripping the hook becomes, because the hook is based around Neiman's interaction with Fletcher. The more brutal Fletcher is, the more interest will be created in the audience about how Neiman copes with this situation. Now, let's look at the climax.
You are a worthless, friendless, faggot-lipped little piece of shit whose mommy left daddy when she figured out he wasn't Eugene O'Neill, and who is now weeping and slobbering all over my drum set like a fucking 9-year-old girl. So for the final father-fucking time, say it louder!
I'm upset!
One cool thing I will say about this climax, and really almost all of Fletcher's insults, is that they always come back to music. The scene does a great job of subtly establishing Fletcher's character and what is important to him, because really, he is the driving force of the hook.
Carl, start practicing harder, Neiman. Whiplash, bar 125, big boy tempo, 5, 6, 8.
And that right there is our resolution. Neiman is kicked off the drums, replaced, and told to practice harder. But he doesn't leave. The rest of the film now is given an opportunity to play with the premise that the hook has set up, the relationship between Neiman and Fletcher. And just like that, you have listened to me blabber through another famous scene. In all seriousness, I hope I could provide some insight into what makes a good hook in fiction and the things that Whiplash does well. Writing can be a bit nebulous sometimes, so I hope this video was able to make things a bit more clear. And if you are a person that likes clarity and ease, I would highly recommend checking out our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you need a website for a school project, personal use, or business, Squarespace is there to make the whole process simple. Absolutely no computer science degree is needed. Creating a website with their service is as easy as pointing, clicking, and typing. You can customize web pages to your preferences with videos, photo galleries, backgrounds, and more. I'm actually using Squarespace to make my own website for the channel, and hopefully you guys can see what it looks like very soon. Anyway, check out squarespace.com, and by using my personal link in the description, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. If you like what you heard, you could be a total homie and support the channel on Patreon. As always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you all again soon.